Welcome to the Sociology of the Sweet Science. I'm joined today by Mr. Shelly Finkel, who has managed everyone from Jimi Hendrix to Deontay Wilder. I'd like to talk about his trajectory working in music and boxing as a manager. And let's start off by talking about how you initially got started off in the show.
Well, first I was in the music business, and there I was a promoter and ran a club on Long Island and brought some of the greatest acts to this club. I was the first one to play the Doors on the East Coast. And then I had Cream play at the club. Then I had Procol Harum. These are probably acts, I guess you know the Doors.
Of course.
And maybe Cream, but they're before your time.
No, I know Cream very well. Eric Clapton.
Oh, yeah.
And then I know you also worked with the Grateful Dead. Was that more in the event capacity?
Well, let me go on. So I left the club at one point, started doing shows at the Village Theater, which Bill Graham bought and converted to the Fillmore East. At the same time, I started doing concerts with a partner, Gary Kerfers, in Flushing Meadow Park. And there, the first weekend, we had The Who open for the Doors. The following weekend, we had Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and the Chambers Brothers. And then it just grew from there. Then, around 1970, I was handling an act called Hammer, and we were playing in Ohio, and I met a college promoter by the name of Jimmy Koplik. Him and I ended up being partners, and in 1973, we did the largest concert in American history. It was called Summer Jam, and it was the Allmans, the Grateful Dead, and the band. We had over 600,000 people. It was bigger than Woodstock. And from there, Jimmy and I did a lot of other shows. And at one point, there was a neighbor who lived next door to me. And I started taking the young boy who lived there with me everywhere, took him to my concerts. And we went and saw the Golden Gloves in New York. And I saw a couple of kids. I thought they were really good. I followed them. And they were going to go to the Olympics in 1980 and then turn pro. But Jimmy Carter boycotted the Olympics because of Afghanistan. And these kids asked me if I would want to manage them. And I did, and had a couple of champions. But then in 1980, this young fellow who was not going to turn pro, period, got very friendly with me, and I recruited him and 4 other fighters. I recruited 5 from the 1984 Olympic team, and 4 of them became world champions. Mark Breland, Meldrick Taylor, Pernell Whitaker, and Evander Holyfield. And from there, it just grew. And I ended up managing at one time or another Manny Pacquiao, Mike Tyson, the Klitschko brothers, Deontay Wilder. I think I have about 25 world champions. Most of them have been developed, not stolen from another promoter. And he gave me time to think. Mike McCallum. There's, just a bunch.
So when you tell this amazing story, I can't help but think, how do you make such great connections and spot talent? And as you mentioned, most of the boxers that you've turned champion, you've developed. They're not poached. How is it that you have just this eye for both talent in music and talent in boxing?
Well, I think it's very important no matter what, to have character. And in boxing, as in life, you're going to be tested. A couple of years ago, I gave my wife a birthday card. It said, "Life is great, just not perfect." And it's not. You could be sick, you could fall, you could be hit by a car. Anything could happen. And in life, you get kicked around. And the winners survive. Many people go bankrupt, but they figure a way to make it again. Many sell their company and still make it again. And then fighters, the great ones, get knocked down but get up and find a way to win. And boxing is hard. The first time you're in the ring, even though going in you think, "Oh, I could do anything," you're not prepared to be hit. It's not a normal thing. You get hit, you cover up, or you swing back. But I usually look for young fighters who are amateur. That way they've got their amateur experience, they've got the experience of being punched, and there's no real pressure on them from me to do something they're not prepared to or want to.
In your time working with boxers, have you noticed a shift between, say, the Golden Gloves, the national championships, and the Olympic prospects, and the caliber of fighter that we're seeing coming out of each of those?
Well, there's a lot. And a lot of times I make the right decision, but there's some you don't. You want to look at someone who you've seen in the amateurs, seen them get rocked, but figured out how to come back and win. And those are the kids, if they have the other innate ability, I want to work with. And if I have the opportunity to work with, and they do what they're supposed to do, I believe they'll be world champions.
And what are some of your expectations that you have for your rising prospects?
One, they want to fight. Not me, not you, it's them, because one day they're going to be in the ring alone with their opponent, and that opponent's going to be looking to take their head off. So you want them to want it so badly that they'll dig deep, go between a school guard crossing, and somehow they are going to wait, let that car pass, not get caught in the jam, and get to the other side. And that's oversimplifying, of course. But the same in the amateurs. They're going to learn how to take a punch, how to ride out adversity, and then they're going to go to the pros. And I want to know that a kid I manage wants to be champion. Because if they don't, I don't want to handle them. And I don't want the responsibility of working with someone that I don't believe in. And I can't believe in someone if they don't want to make it.
And how many fighters do you currently represent?
3.
3. And so outside of Deontay Wilder, who are the other 2?
Amantis Stanionis, who's WBA welterweight champion.
And so would you be able to talk about meeting each of those 3 fighters and how you started to work with them?
Sure. Deontay, I've been with 15 years. I saw in the U.S. Nationals, and he knocked out most of his opponents. And I knew that if he had the proper the proper guidance inside and outside the ring, he couldn't help but be a champion. And then Amantis Stanionis, who I was involved with before the last Olympics. And I said, this kid's got the determination, and he did. And he's now on top with no golden gloves or anything on his shoes. He still has the person's shoes who gave them to him, and they're from the amateurs, and he looks at them, and he can see where he came from to where he is and where he wants to go. And those are basically the first qualities. Then you see, I'm not as interested when I see a young person who he beat. I'm interested in how he beat him. Did he show what's going to come out later under adversity? As I said, everyone goes through adversity.
Exactly. And if you look at, say, Deontay, who just faced adversity with the Tyson Fury trilogy, he came back in the Elanius fight, and I believe it was the least punches ever thrown in a knockout victory. And he persevered through adversity to put himself in a great spot for 2023.
Correct. And it's not publicized much, but not one fighter that he has ever fought did not hit the canvas.
Yeah. Yes. And even in some of his more strong-shinned opponents like Ortiz,
Oh, he knocked them out. He knocked out both fights with Ortiz. He had Fury down 4 times.
And when they're talking about, say, a potential matchup this year with Ruiz, we look at the fight that he just had with Ortiz, and there's hardly any punches thrown, and let alone knockdowns, throughout the entire fight. And I think when Deontay, fights, say, a Joshua, a Ruiz, or even a Fury, again, it is someone who has the determination, the will to not quit and ever back down. The reason he wanted the trilogy so much is because he wanted to go out on his own terms, and he is a fighter that will always persevere.
Correct. It took a lot to get that lawsuit into the courts. We fought to get it there. He got it there. No one believed he would win the case. He did. And he has what it takes to be a star.
How come people did not think that lawsuit was going to go in his favor? Because I know Eddie Hearn was running his mouth about Joshua and Fury in August fighting in the Middle East, and that was unable to get made because Deontay won the case. Why is it that Eddie and all these people were so confident that this would not go in Deontay's favor?
I don't know if confident or arrogant is the right word.
Okay.
And I don't know if Eddie personally ever read that lawsuit.
That lawsuit was not public, correct?
Yes, it was public.
Okay. And the details and the information?
Yeah, everything. And even before that, he had the papers because we had to exchange them. Mm-hmm. But more important, as a, I guess, gambler, you'd say, because when you're handling a fighter, you're gambling. They knew that Al and I are not dumb. I'm not saying a genius or this, that, but we're not dumb. And if we're spending hundreds of thousands, it turned over $1 million on a lawsuit, we got to believe something. And even if we had a 5% chance, we had a 5% chance. So it wasn't a guarantee. And if I were in their position, and if they were making what they quote, say they were going to make on that fight, I heard all numbers, let's say 150 million each. Mm-hmm. I would have said, hey, I'll make 40 instead of 50, and I'll make 40 instead of 50. Let's offer Deontay 20 and see if he takes it. Never tried. So they lost the big payday. You don't need to run any charity for them. They were both doing very well. But that fight did not happen. And no matter what Joshua says about how much he wants it, it wasn't made.
No, and I saw Eddie Hearn today say that he's going to fight a top 15 opponent next, and then White rematch, and then Tyson Fury ideally at the end of the year. And again, arrogance or confidence, we'll leave the people up to decide.
Yeah, that also passed on Deontay, which he was going to fight. I'm going to fight him. He called me. Why doesn't Shelly call him? Because when you call Eddie, the next thing, it's in the papers. It's on the press. He called me, can we talk? I have the emails. I said, sure. I said, you want to fight next? He said, I don't think so. I have a trainer. I want to do a new trainer. I said, fine. So we'll fight second. He said, yes. Now it's not even third because he doesn't want to get knocked out by Deontay.
And I think also just after the 2 losses to Usyk, it would just drop his stock just exponentially more, and that's something that Eddie's trying to preserve by kind of building him back up again. And
right, but it would be terrible if he gets knocked out by White.
Absolutely. And going back to you were talking about you and Al. I wanted to ask you about working as a manager and then working with the promoter, which is Al Heyman of PBC in the case of Deontay Wilder.
No, he's a manager.
Okay. So Al Heyman at PBC is the manager.
Right.
Correct. And so what is your role in Deontay's quarter?
We're co-managers. We discuss everything in his career, and then we go to the promoter, which is Tom Brown, and tell him what we're looking to do. Okay.
And working with a co-manager, is that something that you have done with most of your fighters, or is this something that is more exclusive with Deontay?
No, each one has its own unique situations. I, early on, was co-manager for a bunch of fighters with Lou Duva. Lou Duva would take care of the training. I would take care of the business.
And when you say take care of the business, what are some of those elements that they would encompass?
Who to pick as an opponent, what you want for your fighter, what you pay for the opponent in order to make that number work. Watching the kid so that hopefully he saves some of his money. Try to guide him how to go forward.
And when you are negotiating with, say, a different promoter in the matchmaking stages, how does that work itself out? Because I know certain promotions just seems to be impossible to get a fight made. How is it that you can work with other promoters to get a fight made in the interest of your fighter?
Well, as the manager, I never get a share of the other fighter if my fighter loses. Mm-hmm. But a promoter can. And that's where the problems are. Look, I go and the fighter says, I'm not giving you promotion rights if I win. And then that promoter says, well, I'm not going to go out of business if you beat my fighter. And that's where the rub is.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say the biggest difference is working in boxing compared to your initial route in music and putting on live events?
Well, in music, there's no conflict being the promoter and the manager. And you don't have sanctioning bodies and things like that in order to make a concert. You may have local jurisdictions, but it's not quite the same.
Oh. Shelly, thank you so much for talking to me today. And
no problem.
I wanted to ask you one last question.
Sure.
When can we, as fans, expect to see Deontay back in the ring?
In the next 4 months or so.
That's amazing news. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful week.
You too. Enjoy your dinner.
Thank you.